Welcome to the Upside Journal podcast. In 2026, domestic venture capital is struggling with extended exit timelines and dry powder gridlock. Yet, a sophisticated layer of cross-border diaspora business networks is quietly unlocking predictable, countercyclical returns in AI and climate tech. Today, we're breaking down the hidden alpha traditional funds are missing.
Exactly. What we're delivering in today's Explainer is a clinical executive briefing on a fundamental shift in how sophisticated operators evaluate execution risk. We're looking at leadership not as a personality trait, and definitely not as individual charisma or vision. We are treating it as engineered, auditable infrastructure.
Right, because if you're an institutional investor backing a visionary who doesn't have a mechanical system to execute that vision, you are carrying massive, unpriced risk. This kind of structural readiness is an absolute requirement for true capital efficiency.
So, here's the diligence framework for today's briefing. First, we'll cover the VC paradox of 2026. Second, how to effectively audit the leadership stack. Third, the 5-layer leadership operating system, or LOS. And finally, the repeatable flywheel framework. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The VC paradox of 2026, scaling capital versus scaling capacity. Look, there's a serious systemic risk hiding inside modern venture capital right now, because we're seeing much larger, earlier funding rounds combined with the sheer speed of AI-accelerated execution. Organizational complexity is hitting companies way before their leadership systems are ready for it.
We're seeing this dangerous gap between scaling capital and scaling capacity. The default fallback for most startups is what we call the founder as router model. It's that classic cliché of the visionary founder, but mechanically, it's incredibly fragile. It becomes a massive operational bottleneck, because literally every single decision routes through one person's judgment.
Exactly. They become a single point of failure, completely dependent on their own bandwidth. Contrast that with the leadership operating system. This is institutional-grade readiness. It's robust, it's scalable, and it relies on documented decision rights that allow for decentralized execution. The machine just runs, whether the founder is in the building or not.
Moving on to Section 2, auditing the leadership stack. Asymmetric information and talent verification. For sophisticated operators and investors, assessing a team means you absolutely have to verify their internal mechanics. You need to audit an organization's leadership stack exactly the same way you would diligence their technology stack.
So, what is a leadership stack? It's a defined architecture of decision rights, communication cadence, information flow, and accountability loops. And again, this runs whether or not the leader is in the room. You have to treat leadership as a formally designed system, not some soft HR concept.
We've all seen it happen, right? Companies hire brilliant engineers, secure massive funding, and then just absolutely implode in year 2. Why? Because every cross-functional decision requires a bespoke meeting. They burn cash just trying to figure out who has the authority to launch a single feature. Which brings us to a really pivotal insight from the data. Quote, most operational failure is not a strategy failure. It is a cadence failure. Yes! Organizational collapse rarely happens because the strategic direction was wrong. It happens because the operating rhythm completely fails. When meetings don't have defined decision outputs, you're just converting expensive leadership time into mere activity. You're spending capital on motion, not actual progress.
Section 3. The 5-layer LOS. The climate tech supply chain edge. In highly complex environments, like climate tech supply chains, this specific topology is your ultimate antidote to operational bottlenecks. Let's systematically walk through the 5 layers. Layer 1 is decision rights. Simply put, who can actually decide something without escalating it? You codify this in a decision rights matrix. Layer 2 is cadence. How often does the review happen? You need a rhythm calendar for this. I'll take the next 3. Layer 3 is information architecture. What data reaches whom and exactly when? Think dashboards and KPI packets. Layer 4 is accountability loops. Who actually owns the business outcome, not just the task? And Layer 5 is escalation paths. What breaks the default path and where does that exception route? Quick note on this. If every single exception goes straight to the CEO, you don't have an escalation path. You just have a bottleneck. To lock in that foundational layer of decision rights, institutional operators rely on frameworks like the RAPID model. It gives you the exact mechanical granularity required to eliminate ambiguity. Recommend, agree, perform, input, decide. By assigning these specific roles, you establish single-point accountability. You stop that endless revisiting of decisions that totally kills operational momentum. Everyone knows who gives input, and crucially, everyone knows who ultimately makes the call.
Once those decision rights are set, you need a rhythm. We call these nested cadences, and they are literally the heartbeat of the system. Weekly meetings are strictly for near-term operational execution and clearing blockers. Monthly meetings are for tracking business performance against the plan and making resourcing decisions. And quarterly meetings are for strategic recalibration and structural changes. This ensures fixed agenda structures and documented outputs that carry the institutional memory of the firm. If you're evaluating a startup and leadership is debating long-term strategy in a weekly blocker meeting, their cadence is completely broken.
But look, that heartbeat only matters if the right data flows through it. Information architecture generally suffers from two main failure modes. First, information overload. This is where dashboards just multiply but produce noise rather than signal, mostly because no one actually owns them. The second is information starvation. Critical operational data gets collected, but it never reaches the actual person holding the decision rights. The only way to solve both of these is a strict KPI ownership model. Every single recurring metric must have one named owner.
Section 4. The repeatable flywheel framework, executing the operator's playbook.
Translating this architecture into a predictable, capital-efficient flywheel requires executing a sequential operator's playbook. Step 1. Map your current decision flow. Step 2. Build your formal decision rights matrix. Step 3. Design that nested cadence calendar we just covered. Step 4. Assign strict KPI ownership. Step 5. Document your escalation triggers. And Step 6, which is absolutely crucial, audit this system quarterly. You have to formally treat this operating system as a product that gets iteratively reviewed and upgraded. Think about it. If you scale from 50 to 200 employees, the operating system you built at 50 is going to break. You have to audit it.
During those quarterly audits, you must track core leadership health metrics. And for the funds out there, these are the hidden alpha metrics traditional players are completely missing. You're not just looking at revenue anymore.
Right. You are measuring the underlying health and execution velocity of the leadership system itself. You're looking at retention rates by manager. You're auditing the actual quality of cross-functional collaboration. You're measuring the speed of information flow during a crisis. Which brings us to the ultimate penetrating diligence question for any institutional investor or board member looking at a scaling company. You have to ask yourself, is your capital funding a scalable operating system or just a charismatic bottleneck? Exactly. If a founder cannot diagram their organization's leadership stack for you, you are carrying massive, unpriced execution risk straight into the deal.
Capital has become highly commoditized, but the infrastructure to execute high-trust, cross-border deal flow is rare. To get ahead of these macro signals and access our premium investor network, subscribe to the Upside Journal and join our membership communities. See you in the next Daily Drop.